Hey governors, I'm not Sakurai because none of the characters I want are getting into Smash Brothers. It hurts so badly that girl food isn't going to be added to Smash Brothers, and I'm going to go right outside of Nintendo headquarters because of this. Whenever a new Super Smash Brothers game is coming out, it seems like the main conversation surrounding it is talking about what's going to be added. It's a fun time seeing what new characters, stages, songs, modes, or even more would be introduced to the game. But it seems like the biggest of all these discussions is always what new characters are going to be playable, and it does make sense. For a game series all about video game icons crossing over and beating each other up, it's important and interesting to know which characters exactly we'll be able to do that as. And it feels only inevitable that a new Smash Brothers game will be out for the Switch too, as the series makes a ton of money for Nintendo. Expecting Nintendo to not make a new Smash Brothers game is like expecting me to have a girlfriend. It's not gonna happen. So before that game inevitably gets announced, I just want to talk about my opinions on potential newcomers for the game and how I feel about them joining the battle. Whether that be me wanting them in some cases or even not wanting them at all, I'll try to say my honest opinions on each of the characters I talk about today. I obviously cannot talk about every single potential Smash Brothers newcomer to exist. Talking about each individual Tetris piece would be overkill, but I'll sure try to cover a ton of them. Also, no, I'm not going to talk about how I feel about certain characters who are already in Smash Brothers returning. Well, yes, I do hope all my mains return, and I probably would be fine if characters like Almar don't return, but that feels like a different topic entirely from what I wanted to talk about today. I'll say that if we lived in a perfect world, all of the characters from Ultimate will return, even if that isn't at all realistic. Maybe if enough people want, I'll make a video talking about my opinions on each of the Ultimate fighters returning to Smash 6, but that's only if people want that. But still, we'll just be sticking with characters who haven't been playable in Smash Brothers before, because Leon Kennedy is much more interesting to talk about than Jigglypuff. But still, let's hop into who I do and don't want in Smash Brothers 6. Picking a character to start the discussion with was a bit difficult, but I decided to start with Crash Bandicoot, mainly because he's a gaming icon and a very common Smash request. Though bad news regarding that, I have a very basic opinion on his inclusion. I personally have never actually played a Crash Bandicoot game before, unless Skylanders counts, which no. But honestly, I would still love to see Crash join Smash Brothers. I definitely think he's iconic enough to be added, up there with characters like Mega Man or Sonic, so sure, I would like to see him added to Smash. They should call the game Super Crash, but I'm so sorry, I would not blame you if you unsubscribe for that joke. But a character I have a similar opinion to Crash would be Rayman. I do think he could be interesting. He definitely is iconic and requested enough to join the battle. I just have never played a Rayman game personally, so I would not be the most excited person when it comes to his inclusion. I do know some of my friends are fan of his series and want him in Smash, so while I would be happy if he got in, I wouldn't be as excited as they would be. Him being such a popular character is part of the reason why the Rayman leak in the Smash Brothers 4 days was such a popular leak after all. And speaking of characters from franchises I have never played yet I still have friends who are big into the franchises they're from, how about a character from Monster Hunter? I have a real life friend who is really into Monster Hunter, and I know he would murder me if I didn't talk about the series in this video, so here we go! I would personally expect a Hunter as the fighter in Smash, but I also think the monsters themselves like Laggy could be insanely cool if they get the same treatment as Ridley did. But besides my real life friend, another reason I wanted to mention Monster Hunter is because I'm honestly surprised there wasn't any playable representation in Smash Bros. Ultimate. There are such things as a Monster Hunter Mii costume, Monster Hunter Spears, and even Rathalos as a boss, and because of that, I'm honestly surprised there was no character on the roster. So yeah, even with no personal experiences playing the Monster Hunter games, I would still love a character from that series on the roster. But I know so far, I've only talked about game series I've never played personally, like the Crash Bandicoot series and Monster Hunter. So let's switch gears and talk about my personal favorite game series, the Super Mario franchise. And of course I immediately gotta talk about Waluigi! That was my best Waluigi impression. Was it good? Nah, never mind. Waluigi has had a very tricky history in Smash Brothers, with being requested both ironically and unironically by fans for as long as I can remember. But what side do I fall on in this entire debate? Honestly, I don't really care about Waluigi's inclusion. I'm not joining any of the protests to add him to the game, but I also would not complain if he did get added in the game either. So whether he gets added or not, I wouldn't really mind, but hey, I do think it would be cool to see him in the game just to complete the quartet of Mario, Luigi, and Wario in Smash Brothers. Besides that, yeah, I don't really care either way. The only reason I'll care is just Waluigi being able to represent the Mario spin-off games like Mario Party and Mario Tennis. Hey, if Daisy won't do that, Waluigi might as well. But how about a Mario character I have stronger feelings on getting included? Or really, I guess I should say a group of Mario characters, because I'm going to be talking about the Goomba or really any of Bowser's army like the Koopa Troop or a Kamek. When talking about possible generic enemies getting into Smash, people did joke a lot about the Goomba getting in, but that was before Piranha Plant actually got into Smash Ultimate's roster. Now after the Piranha Plant's inclusion, it's a little hard to tell whether people want the Goomba ironically or unironically, sort of like Waluigi. So in my opinion, honestly, I wouldn't really want any more generic Mario enemies on the roster. Not only because if we're gonna bloat the franchise with what already has the most amount of fighters in Ultimate, why would we add a random character like the Goomba instead of giving a more deserving franchise another character like Dino or Paper Mario? But also, I do think if we added another generic Mario enemy like the Koopa Troopa or Magic Koopa, that would ruin what made the Piranha Plant so unique and funny. Expanding on jokes even further doesn't make them funnier, and trust me, I out of all people know a lot about beating jokes into the ground. So yeah, honestly, after Piranha Plant, I wouldn't really want any more characters like Goomba or Koopa Troopa out of the Mario franchise. They should still totally add the 4 goats from Pac-Man though, that would be sick. But that does remind me, let's basically do the opposite of that section where I wanted us Mario characters by having me talk about wanting more Sonic characters. This section does really cover any Sonic character like Tails, Knuckles, or Shadow, because I really have the exact same opinion on all of them. How are there no Sonic characters on the Smash roster besides Sonic himself? I'm not even a giant Sonic guy, and I don't even get this. Out of any third-party video game franchise, I believe Sonic deserves a second rep the most, and it's honestly such a shame that the franchise is being treated like this character-wise. But hey, I guess this is just Nintendo's revenge on the entire Mario vs. Sonic debate. Who for the Sonic series gets added exactly in my opinion doesn't matter, but I do think both Tails and Eggman, or Robotnik, or whatever else they're calling him now, would be cool first additions. I've heard people pitch Shadow as a Sonic Echo Fighter, but I actually prefer Metal Sonic as his Echo Fighter instead. I also think Shadow could have a more unique moveset, and if they're gonna add a clone of Sonic, why not add a character who was made as a literal copy of Sonic in the Sonic franchise? I honestly cannot believe that Final Fantasy got more reps in Ultimate than Sonic, knowing how stingy Square Enix could be. But still, just please add another Sonic character to the next Smash game. And since we're already talking about characters from whole franchises, let me swap from AAA studios and let's talk about more indie game series. First off, how about talking about a potential Undertale or Deltarune character? I could make it more obvious that I'm a Deltarune fan if I tried, considering how I do have Noelle as my profile picture, and I do use a lot of Undertale and Deltarune music in my background in my videos. And hey, that's just what I include in videos. You truly know how big of a fan of Undertale I am if you saw how I make cookies. So of course I would love to see more Undertale rep in Smash Brothers. We did get the Sans Mii costume in Ultimate, but we're talking about the main roster here. So I'll be down to see Undertale or Deltarune represented in Smash, but I can only imagine either being Sans, Frisk, or Chris as a playable fighter. Yeah, sorry to all the people who wanted the bird that carries you over the disappointingly small gap in Smash Brothers, but I doubt they get on the roster. I would still be fully fine with more Deltarune content in terms of things like spirits, but I'm expecting more. I would love to be able to play as Noelle in Smash Brothers, but she'll probably fit more as a spirit. I already have enough trauma of hurting Noelle through the Snowgrave route, no way I could be fine with hurting her in a fighting game. But still, even though I would love to see an Undertale or Deltarune character on the roster, I can't see any of them besides Sans or Chris happening. But moving on to a different indie series, how about Five Nights at Freddy's? Yes, I am dead serious about talking about this, please hear me out for a second. Five Nights at Freddy's is a very iconic gaming franchise from the last couple of years. To the point where my mom once saw a horror bear head at Spirit Halloween once and asked me if that was Freddy Fazbear. I mean it wasn't, but even my mom knows about FNAF, which is ironically the scariest part of this franchise. But besides of how iconic the series is, and how many fans it has, many people have wanted to see somebody from the series in the Smash roster. But can I see it actually happening? Honestly, not really. I would love to see the FNAF franchise represented in other ways such as Mii costumes or as a spirit, but as a fighter, yeah, I can't see it personally. I do fully get why other people may want a character like Springtrap to join the battle to beat up characters like Ness and the Ice Climbers, but I cannot see them actually joining rosters as full characters. And just to keep the random bullcrap with gaming bears going, let's talk about Monokuma from Danganronpa. I'm literally just doing this because Monokuma got requested for this video, I am so sorry. So Danganronpa is a franchise that sure is interesting to say the least, but hey, it did start off as a game so it technically could get into Smash Brothers. And obviously if anybody from the games were to be added, it would be Monokuma or Junko. I know, I'm surprised it wasn't Tera too, but yeah, Monokuma is probably most likely. And just like the other Bear franchise with tons and tons of dead people in it, I cannot personally see it happening, though I would find it funny. Come on, I just want to have a Chihiro Fujisaki spirit, it would be awesome! Okay, let's move on to normal characters again. So how about we get back to Nintendo and talk about a new rep for both Pokemon and Fire Emblem. I'm going to combine my opinions on both the possibility of a new Pokemon character and a new Fire Emblem character together because I have very similar thoughts on both. The main difference between these two franchises is that I have played Pokemon games before, because unlike Fire Emblem fans, my parents loved me. But ever since the Smash series started, at least one new character from both Pokemon and Fire Emblem have been added, and that's true even in Ultimate. So honestly, I do expect there to be another fighter from both series in the next Smash Bros. Game, I just can't really guess who. My main guess for Pokemon will probably be a basic answer of Decidueye or a Pokemon from a newer generation, but I can't really guess any new character for Fire Emblem because yet again, I have friends. So still, I do expect both Pokemon and Fire Emblem to get a new rep in the next Smash Bros. Game, even if it isn't for the most exciting reason. And speaking of adding more fighters to the Nintendo franchise that are already in Smash Bros., let's talk about Bandana D from Kirby. I myself have not played that many Kirby games, but from the ones I have played, I think Bandana D will be a good fourth Kirby character to add. But to be fair, I've only played 2 Kirby games in my life. But yeah, while I myself am not demanding for Bandana D to join in, I'm not against him either. He seems cool. But hey, since we're already talking about a cute game series like Kirby, that gives me a perfect segue to the next game series I want to talk about. Mortal Kombat! People have wanted Mortal Kombat characters like Sub-Zero and Scorpion for Smash Bros. For a while, and while I do think it would be cool, I do get why they probably wouldn't be added. Other fighting game characters have been added to Smash like Ryu and Terry, which does make total sense. It's like inviting chefs to a cooking competition, it would be weirder if you didn't. So yeah, wanting a Mortal Kombat character in Smash Bros. Does make sense, especially since Mortal Kombat is one of the most iconic fighting games ever, right up there with Street Fighter. But one of the most iconic parts of Mortal Kombat is the gore and violence in it, which I understand why it wouldn't work in the same franchise as Yoshi and the Wii Fit Trainer. So yes, while I do think Sub-Zero and Scorpion deserve to be in Smash due to their iconicness alone, I do fully understand why they probably wouldn't be included. This is a similar experience to the Doom guide to me. Doom is also known for his violence, so I can't get why Nintendo may be hesitant to include content from Doom in Smash Bros. Wait, never mind, Nintendo added Doom Guy as a Mii Gunner costume in Smash Bros. Ultimate. So while I do think that Doom Guy might not be added as a full fighter in Smash for a similar reason for the Mortal Kombat fighters, I'm at least happy that Doom did get some representation in Smash Bros. Before. And for the final video game character I want to talk about in this video, how about I mention my most wanted character for Smash? So out of all the characters I could possibly want, who would it be? And that would be Hat Kid from A Hat in Time. Yeah, I'm not too it wasn't Peter Griffin, but trust me, I do have a good reason. It's just that Hat in Time is one of my favorite video games. Yeah, that's it. I know I should have probably had that same logic for games like Deltarune, but I do also just think that Hat Kid would fit perfectly in Smash Bros. A giant part of why I love A Hat in Time is how much it reminds me of classic Nintendo games, so adding her to a game full of other classic Nintendo characters like Mario, Donkey Kong, and Banjo-Kazooie would be awesome. Is my reason for wanting her very shallow? Just wanting Hat Kid because I like A Hat in Time and I want to see it in the same game as other characters I love? Yes, it is! But that doesn't change the fact that this is my terrible opinion. I've wanted Hat Kid in Smash before Smash Ultimate was even announced, so the day she gets added would be the day I can celebrate like when NASA scientists landed on the moon. I promise that Space Joke was accidental, I am so sorry. But still, I would love to see Hat Kid in the next Smash Bros. Game, as she is my most wanted Smash character as of now. But now you may be looking at the runtime and wondering what else I could possibly talk about. I mentioned a wide variety of video game characters people have talked about for Smash Bros. For years, even talking about my most wanted characters. So what else can I talk about? Well, how about talking about my least wanted Smash Bros. Character? Or to put it in other words, I want to talk about one type of character I don't want to see in Smash. That being, any character that isn't from a video game like Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny. This kind of discussion has seemed to be around ever since Smash Bros. Has been around, where some fans wanted characters like Goku added to Smash Bros. Even Sakurai himself was considering adding James Bond to Smash Bros. Melee, but ended up not doing so due to complicated licensing issues. But if it seems like a decent percentage of the fanbase would be fine with non-game characters in Smash, to even the Smash director seeming to at one point being fine with it, why do I not want it? Well, for one, and the gigantic reason most people are against this, Smash Bros. Is a celebration of video games. Adding an explicit movie or book character would be weird. It would be like when you get an onion ring in your fries at Burger King. Nobody invited that here. And that does lead into my main reason why I don't want non-gaming characters in Smash. If they were to add a character like Darth Vader or Superman to Smash Bros. Now, then they don't have to balance out all the gaming characters with more movie, TV show, or book characters. It'd be super weird to just add one movie character, so of course they would have to add a ton of other movie characters such as Indiana Jones, Forrest Gump, RoboCop, and much, much more. So if they did start adding movie characters to Smash, basically say goodbye to any chance of your favorite video game characters getting in. We gotta worry about adding SpongeBob and Shrek first. So yeah, that's really my main gripe with non-gaming characters getting added to Smash Bros. I was gonna say that they should just stick to other platform fighters like Multiverses, but we all know how that went. I also once had a dream where Willy Wonka and Shrek got added to Smash Bros. And I had to stay laying awake for about 10 minutes to convince myself that wasn't true. That was the worst dream of my life. But after that long rant, I do want to answer a question I have thought about long before deciding to make this video. If I could add one non-gaming character in Smash, who would it be? My only rules for this question was that the character couldn't originate from a video game, they can't be a real life figure, and I'm only allowed to pick one character. I'm sorry, because as much as I would love every member of the Beatles to be in Smash, they aren't very likely. So who would I personally pick? Honestly, I'll probably just pick Spider-Man. I think he can be fun, and honestly, I just like my web boy. What else could I say? So yeah, even though I don't at all want any non-gaming characters in Smash, if I had to add only one to Smash, it would be Spider-Man. But if he did get added to Smash, they did just reuse the amazing voice acting he had in the PS2 Spider-Man game.
On a different rooftop?
Yes.
Different from this one?
Yes.
Are you serious?
And those were my feelings about a ton of different characters getting into Smash Brothers. I obviously wasn't able to talk about every video game character or series to exist here, but hey, nobody cares what Xenoblade fans think anyway, so who cares? Exactly when the next Smash game is going to come out, I cannot possibly tell, but I am still very excited to see what the roster may look like. But yet again, if a Goomba gets added but not Hack Kid, that would be complete garbage! Still, I hope you all enjoyed hearing my terrible opinions on silly video games, and I would love to hear if you guys agreed or disagreed in the comment section below. I'd also love to know who you guys would add into the next Smash Brothers game if you had the chance to pick. You may have some stupid opinion like you wanting to see Tingle in Smash, but hey, I won't judge you to your face. And I would also love to talk more about video games, especially more Nintendo games, because that's mainly what I grew up on. So if you guys want to one day hear me yap way too long about Super Mario Galaxy, I would love to. Still, I'm about to go protest outside of Nintendo's headquarters for them to add Shadow the Hedgehog into the next Smash Brothers game. Thank you for watching and have a great day!